What is going on, Culture Changers? Welcome back to another episode of the Culture Changers podcast. I'm Cody.
And I'm Dylan.
And today we will be going over our week one predictions for the NFL season. Very exciting time that the NFL season is finally returning. This Thursday starts the first game with the Houston Texans versus the Kansas City Chiefs. The Houston Texans were a run-oriented team last year. The Chiefs were very poor at defending the run. But we know that the Houston Texans won the regular season game last year and they lost the playoff game last year. So obviously there was a split. Who's really the better team? Obviously the Chiefs went on to win the Super Bowl and they have such a high-powered offense. It's the ring ceremony. They're back in Kansas City. I don't see any way that they lose this game. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Kansas City Chiefs to win this game.
Yeah, I think the emotions are going to be pretty high for the Chiefs just because they want to, we won the Super Bowl last year and we're going to prove to the league again this year that we're still the best team in the league.
Right.
So, I think that the Chiefs, they have the pass rush. They have the versatility on offense. They're just an overall good team. They're coached really well by Andy Reid. I think that they're going to perform really well, where the Texans are going to try to find their footing a little bit because they got rid of DeAndre Hopkins. Okay. They got rid of Carlos Hyde, who I believe was their leading rusher last year, and they swapped them in for other vets who are, pretty good guys, Brandon Cooks, David Johnson, and stuff like that. So I think the Texans are going to have a little bit of a tough time going into Arrowhead, but overall I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win this game.
Okay, moving on to the next matchup, we have the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington football team. Now, this game is going to be in Washington, and it's going to be their home opener. Obviously, they've had a lot of controversy taking place this offseason, and we'll see how they can fight through that. They're a pretty young football team. They've got a lot of work to do, new coaching staff, new culture that they're trying to bring into that organization. I just don't see any way that the Eagles don't win this game. Typically, you see an Eagles team that is really hurt and injured. They've traded for Darius Slay, and they tried to make changes into their secondary, also by releasing Malcolm Jenkins. But I think the weapons that they have on offense and just the core that they have there is just too good, and they're just too well of a constructed team to lose this game. I'm picking the Eagles to beat the Washington football team.
Yeah, I just think that, culture and coaching really matters in the NFL. And I really
think it wins you games.
Yeah, I think the Eagles have a really good culture in place with Doug Peterson and just kind of like the leadership guys that they have there with like Fletcher Cox, Jason Peters coming back. I think they have like their leaders in the locker room and they know who they are, even Jason Kelsey. So
right.
I just think that Carson Wentz is going to want to be hungry because a lot of people talk about, how he's, been wishy-washy like his first couple years in the league. And, a lot of guys on offense were hurt last year. So I think a lot of people want to prove that they're better than what they were last year. So I think I'm going to go with Philadelphia in this game as well.
Okay, so far we have agreed on the first two games. We'll see what happens here. Next game that we are going to be taking a look at is the Miami Dolphins versus the New England Patriots. Now, this game is going to be taking place in Foxborough. Miami made a lot of key additions this offseason, adding Byron Jones to go alongside with Xavier Howard, two of the best corners, probably tandem in the league. They had some pass rushers in Emmanuel Ogbah, Shaq Lawson. And then they also added Kyle Van Noy from New England. So obviously I think that their offense is still a work in progress. Their offensive line is still pretty suspect, but they tried targeting that through the draft. I'm not sure if they really added guys through free agency in that department. And then they added Jordan Howard, who had some good seasons with the Bears, but since then he really hasn't been the same.
And Matt Breida.
Yeah, who's really fast. So if he can find that hole, maybe he can take off. The New England Patriots obviously lost a lot of guys like Tom Brady, Mohamed Sanu they let go, and then guys like Patrick Chung and Dante Hightower opted out of the season because of the coronavirus. Yeah. So there's kind of a lot of change going into this game. I think that New England still finds a way to win with Julian Edelman, the core of running backs that they have, just the defensive mind of Bill Belichick to really kind of take this game as a week one victory and kind of get off on the right start in a new era of New England Patriots football. Patriots are my pick to win this game.
See, I think that the Patriots could be they're for one of the teams that never really has a lot of star power on their team. They're like always like one of the most interesting teams, right?
Yeah,
especially this year, just because a lot of those guys opted out or they lost them in free agency. And Cam Newton's going to be like a little bit of a wild card like factor because New England featured obviously Tom Brady for the last like 20 years, right? And he's so accurate. And Cam Newton isn't like the most accurate quarterback, right? Obviously, his abilities lie, being able to run the ball and like escape the pocket, right? So I think it's going to be a little bit different where the Dolphins actually are kind of, returning a lot of the same guys on offense. Who's a receiver? Devontae Parker.
Yeah.
He had a really good season last year. I think they added to the run game. They tried to change up the offensive line a little bit. So, and I like a lot of the things that they did on defense to add with like Kyle Van Noy, the pass rushers you said, and Byron Jones. So I think for this one, I'm going to go with the upset. And I think I'm going to go with Miami actually upsetting New England in the first week, just because a lot of those leaders that New England typically has on defense, they're not going to be there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Miami this for the first week of the season to upset New England in Foxborough.
So we'll kind of tally that up and see how we ended up going after the week one. The next game that we have is the Green Bay Packers at the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Green Bay Packers really didn't do anything this offseason to really kind of help Aaron Rodgers out. If anything, they kind of did the opposite of that by drafting Jordan Love in the first round and then just some other pieces that really aren't going to probably see the field this year. Their defense obviously played pretty well most of the season, but ended up getting torched by San Francisco in the NFC Conference Championship game. So we'll see kind of how they bounce back. Obviously, they have the Smith brothers as pass rushers, and then a young secondary looking to kind of make a statement and improve going into this upcoming season. And then you have the Minnesota Vikings, who lost Stephon Diggs, but they drafted the wide receiver out of LSU.
Yeah.
And then they have Dalvin Cook to depend on, Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph. A solid offensive line, just not the best. And then they've got a great defense, Mike Zimmer leading that. They traded for Yannick Ngakoue, and then they have Danielle Hunter getting after the pass rusher. With all that being said, in this game being in Minnesota, I can't see the Vikings losing this game. I think that they're going to come out in week one. They're going to get after Aaron Rodgers, just make him have a bad game. And I think that the Minnesota Vikings are going to win this game actually pretty easily.
Yeah, I think so far out of the games that we've talked about, I think this is actually going to be the closest game out of all of them. I think that both teams are pretty good on both sides.
They're fairly evenly matched.
Yeah, it's actually, like I said, it's going to be one of the closest games so far. So I do think that overall, you brought up a lot of good points. I think on offense and defense, it's going to be a real chess match between both teams. They both have really good defenses. Kirk Cousins isn't as good as Aaron Rodgers, but they still run a really good, really effective offense, and they really rely on the run game and Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
So I think I'm also going to go with Minnesota to win this just because it's in Minnesota. Again, it's just starting out the season, and I just think that they have a little bit more firepower on offense to just get them like at the one more score that they need to win the game.
Right. Okay, moving on to the next game, we have the Indianapolis Colts at the Jacksonville Jaguars. I really don't think much needs to be said here. Obviously, we talked about how the Jaguars have been cleaning house in our last podcast. If you haven't checked that out, please do that. Make sure to leave a comment on what you think about the Jacksonville Jaguars and what they're looking to do in their future with their rebuild. But I think that the Colts I think they're just going to go in and win this game. Really, honestly, it might just be like a 20-10 game or something along those lines. It's not going to be a fun game to watch. I don't expect too many highlight plays to happen. Jaguars are just depleted of talent right now. I think the Colts just go in and take care of business.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's pretty much expecting the Colts to win this game. The one thing that, I really want to see is how does Phillip Rivers look this year? Because they really signed him to like a big 1-year contract. So, to see if he has anything left in the tank, it did look like his arm was starting to kind of squander off there like the last season or two with the Chargers. So, it'll be really interesting to see if he can come in, maybe provide a little bit more of a boost than Jacoby Brissett did last year. So, yeah, Colts easy.
Okay, now moving on to the next game is going to be the Chicago Bears and Detroit Lions. Now, I really don't know how to feel about this game. Obviously, Matt Stafford missed a lot of time at the end of last season due to an injury that he sustained. And then the Bears are trotting out Mitch Trubisky, who obviously had a very rough season last year. And a lot of people are really calling for him to kind of be moved on from that franchise. They traded for Nick Foles, who obviously he's showed up in some big-time games. But they're going to go ahead and see him and, let Mitch take the reins and continue to try and show why he was a number 2 overall pick. Honestly, I think the Bears defense is really going to keep them in this game. But I kind of really like what Detroit's got going on. I think that they're going to have a really good rushing attack. They've got Galladay, Marvin Jones, offensive line. Another year together kind of helps them out. And I think they're kind of building on year 3 of Matt Patricia's defense. So I think a lot of those guys are going to be a little bit more comfortable. Obviously, they added Jeff Okudah and Desmond Trufant. They lost Darius Slay, but maybe that was just a change that was necessary for the organization. I'm actually going to go ahead and pick the Detroit Lions to win this game. Again, it's a toss-up. Really not too confident about this pick, but I think the Lions could actually win this game.
Yeah, I actually, I think I'm going to go with you. I do think that the Lions are going to come out ahead and win this game. I think Stafford is easily the better quarterback in this game. I think he has better weapons. He has Kenny Galladay. He has Marvin Jones. Hawkinson should be coming back, last year. And they drafted DeAndre Swift, and they just recently actually brought in Adrian Peterson. So they do have, some talent on offense now. Their offensive line seems to be getting better. They re-signed Taylor Decker. Frank Ragnow's pretty good offensive lineman. So overall, they're getting pretty good talent overall. And the real question is mostly on defense, right? They brought in Trey Flowers last offseason.
Right.
So, hopefully him and whoever else can develop a pass rush. And then, I think their linebackers are okay. They brought in Jamie Collins, and their secondary is, it's okay. They drafted Okudah and they brought in Desmond Trufant. So I think that because they have a little bit more on offense, the same way that the Vikings did against the Packers, I think the Lions are going to beat the Bears overall in this game.
Yeah. So we both agreed there with the Detroit Lions actually winning over the Chicago Bears. The next game that we have is the Oakland Raiders versus the Carolina Panthers. Now, I think Josh Jacobs is going to be a big factor in this game. Obviously, it's going to be a battle of the running backs, Josh Jacobs and Christian McCaffrey. We know that the Oakland Raiders are building off of a pretty decent season that they had last year. I think better than most would have expected, but they really did have their woes defensively. And then the Carolina Panthers are really looking at a lot of turnover. They're starting with Teddy Bridgewater instead of Cam Newton. Luke Kuechly retired. James Bradbury moved on. And, it's just going to be a different dynamic there. They've got a new coaching staff. So, again, they're kind of trying to establish a new culture. And they, outside of DJ Moore, I don't really feel like they've had that many consistencies on offense with weapons outside of Christian McCaffrey also. But I actually think that the Raiders are going to come in and win this game. I think Derek Carr, just a veteran, is going to be able to manage the game and help win this game. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think that the Raiders, they're starting to kind of get more and more pieces on offense. They drafted Henry Ruggs. Darren Waller really emerged last year as one of the better tight ends. Josh Jacobs, a lot of people thought could have won Offensive Rookie of the Year before he got hurt.
And then they do have the big threat in Tyrell Williams.
Yeah, so they definitely do have some pieces on offense. And then I think their defense it's not like the flashiest defense by any means, but I think they can kind of get the job done right. They're hoping that Damon Arnett as a rookie is probably going to be their top cornerback. So, defensively, I think is where they might struggle a little bit, but I think offensively they're pretty good. And then with the Panthers, it's a lot of young guys overall. Christian McCaffrey might be one of the longer tenured guys on this roster, right? So defensively, it's a lot of young guys. So, mental mistakes are going to happen. And then Teddy Bridgewater's coming in under, a new system. And Matt Rule is a first-time head coach in the league, right? So I think that the Raiders and John Gruden are going to come in there. They're just going to be a little bit more prepared just because of the experience that they have together. And I think that they're ultimately going to beat the Panthers.
Okay, now moving on to the next game, we have kind of a battle of New York. We have the Jets versus the Bills. This game is going to be taking place in Buffalo. Now, I usually make that statement saying where it is because I think that really does factor into, part of the victory for, one team or the other. The Jets, I don't know what is going on there. They have, guys like Robbie Anderson, but, he moved on to Carolina, so maybe he helps them out. But and then they bring in Brashad Perriman, and it's just he hasn't consistently gotten it done, in his time in the NFL. And Le'Veon had his statistically worst season that he ever had in the NFL last year. It's they really don't even want to use their playmakers when they're available to use. And they really did overhaul their offensive line, so that'll be interesting to see. The defense, they obviously lost Jamal Adams. It's their leader of their defense. And I don't think that their pass rush was too great last year, but they were pretty decent at stopping the run. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of attack this Buffalo Bills team, who I think is getting better. They added Stephon Diggs. I think that they just kind of take the next step. They take care of business. The Bills win in their home stadium. That's that.
Yeah, I think that the Bills are clearly the better team. I don't know what the Jets are really like. It just seems like they've constantly been like just trying to find an identity for the last, like since they've been in the AFC Championship games, those back-to-back years or whenever. They had Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez. Like they just don't know who they are, right? And Darnold being hurt all the time doesn't really help, and they don't really have a lot of talent. And when they do it, they kind of leave, right? So I just think that the Bills are clearly the better team. I mean, they were in the playoffs last year, and like you said, I think they're continuing to get better. They added one of the better receivers in the league with Stephon Diggs, so I think this one's pretty easily going to Bills Mafia.
All right, moving on. This is the game of the week, at least in our opinion. Cleveland Browns at the Baltimore Ravens. Cleveland's obviously coming off of a disappointing season, and the Baltimore Ravens lost early in the playoffs last year, disappointing to them. Both teams, I think, have made great additions this offseason, really haven't lost anything, and are kind of building on, becoming better and trying to be even more of a contender in the AFC with the Chiefs. I don't know, Steelers, I guess, is kind of up there depending on how they go.
I mean, that just shows like the AFC is, it's right for the taking.
Churning, yeah. It's just right up there. And obviously, these are probably two of the most talented rosters in the league, looking at it from top to bottom. There's no way, all 16 weeks, I'm never going against Cleveland no matter what. I'm just taking the Browns to win this game.
Yeah, I think that this is a really good game, right? Like I said, coaching and culture matters. Baltimore's obviously had really good coaching and culture, for several years since Harbaugh's been there, and even before. Basically, since they've been there, they've been really good.
Right.
Obviously, Lamar was the MVP. They really focus on running the ball a lot. They brought in Calais Campbell. They really solidified their front seven. And then Cleveland, they obviously added even more on offense with Austin Hooper. They try to do some more things on defense.
Right.
They lost Joe Schobert, which does hurt, but, it happens, right? Like, they really weren't willing to pay a linebacker.
Yeah, you
like
can't
that.
keep everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like he said, I'm not going to pick against the Browns. Even though I think the Ravens might win this division this year, I still think that the Browns are going to win just because, I think that they have almost like an element of surprise. The Ravens haven't seen what we've
this
done
Browns
on
offense, this new offense. Yeah.
They might have seen an offense similar, but it didn't have the pieces that we had, right? So
right.
I think that maybe we just go out there week 1 o'clock at M&T Bank Stadium, and we just
surprise them.
Yeah, I mean, we did it last year, week 4. Yeah. We did it. Like, I don't think it's that far stretched to believe that Cleveland could go out there and win this game.
Hopefully we win this game, man. That would be such a great start to this season.
Yeah, especially because we end up playing Thursday of basically the same week. So, and it's 2 divisional games. So for us to come out and win this divisional game would really mean a lot. So I'm going to go with Cleveland.
All right. Next up, we have the Seattle Seahawks versus the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah. Now, the Seahawks, I just feel like they're like a good team, but they don't really have like too many stars on their team, right? I think they just kind of get the job done. Sometimes they just do it, by outscoring people. Sometimes they just make a great defensive effort and, kind of make a stand. And the Falcons' defense is pretty suspect. Really since they've been to the Super Bowl, they've gone through injuries, and they just really haven't had a good pass rusher. They added Dante Fowler this offseason, who can maybe help them out in that department. Mm-hmm. I just can't go against Russ. As much as I think that the Falcons can win this game, I think the Seahawks are just going to go into Atlanta, kind of shock them, and win.
Yeah, like you said, the Seahawks don't have a lot of star power, but they have it in the right spots with Wagner and Russell Wilson, right? And then, Tyler Lockett's a really good player. I think DK Metcalf is on the rise to be one of the best, and even Chris Carson as a running back. So I think defensively, for the first time in a while, Seattle might struggle a little bit more than they have. But I think offensively, Russ has the most amount of weapons he's had in quite some time since they've been to those Super Bowls. So, and then Atlanta, they have a really good offense. Obviously, they lost Hooper to the Browns, but they brought in Hayden Hurst and they brought in Todd Gurley. So, I still think it might take a little bit for him to get his legs underneath of him. And like you said, the defense is okay, but they have some work to do. But they have some nice pieces with Grady Jarrett. They drafted A.J. Terrell, Dante Fowler, and then Keanu Neal if he could just stay healthy.
And even Deion Jones, one of the best middle linebackers in the game.
They do have solid pieces on defense. I don't think this is going to be a blowout, but I think Russell is just going to carry his team. That's what he does. There's one possession in the game. I'm giving it to Russell Wilson.
Yep, he takes care of business. Moving on to the next game, we have the Los Angeles Chargers traveling east to play the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, it's going to be Joe Burrow's debut, #1 overall pick. Cincinnati, AJ Green's healthy. Defense is a little suspect, but they've got solid offensive weapons. Their offensive line's a little suspect. And then the Chargers have a lot of the same people coming back. They've made some moves this offseason to kind of shore up their offensive line. Tyrod Taylor is taking over as quarterback, and they've lost Derwin James pretty much for the season. But they did add Chris Harris Jr. to that secondary, which was already really, really good. And then they drafted Kenneth Murray. I think that, the Chargers are going to be able to kind of control this game on both sides of the ball. Tyrod's been known as like a game manager type quarterback. So he's not going to make too many big plays, but he's not really going to hurt you. And then the defense, I think that the front four is really going to kind of control the game, against Cincinnati, who has, really bad offensive line. I think that they're really going to cause pressure and get in Joe Burrow's face, and it's going to kind of disturb him, throughout the game. I think that the Chargers are going to win this game. It might not be a pretty game, but I think that they're going to win this game.
Yeah, I think that the Chargers are just a little bit deeper, both in offensive weapons and like overall defense. I think that they actually have one of the best defenses in the league.
Yeah.
It sucks that Derwin James already got hurt, because if not, I think that the defense could have actually been something pretty special.
They could have honestly maybe been #1 in the league.
Yeah. So, and I just think that right now Tyrod is a better quarterback than Burrow, just because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
Like Tyrod, like you said, he's been there, he's done that, he's even been in the playoffs. So I think overall Burrow has the better talent, and in the long run, obviously he's going to be the better quarterback. But I think that right now the Chargers are just a little bit more veteran-led, and they have a little bit more experience under their belt. Like you said, the offensive line for the Bengals isn't the best, so I think that they could really just eat their lunch that day, take their lunch money.
Right.
So I think that's, somewhere that's really going to hurt the Bengals over the course of the season, especially if they have to face a bunch of good pass rushers. I'm going to go with Tyrod Taylor and the Los Angeles Chargers in this one.
All right, the next game that we have is the Arizona Cardinals at the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, the 49ers are coming off of that disappointing Super Bowl loss in which they had the lead for a good portion of the game. And they have, a really solid roster. They've built it up the right way. They have good coaching. I just think that Kittle is a great playmaker. They've got a solid scheme, that Kyle Shanahan runs there. And then their defense was really good last year. They got after it. They had a really good front seven. And they only lost one piece of that, but they kind of replaced it with Javon Kinlaw in the draft. Now, the Arizona Cardinals went and got DeAndre Hopkins. They kind of found their identity there at the end of the season. They drafted Isaiah Simmons. They're moving Hassan Reddick over, to kind of become a pass rusher opposite of Chandler Jones and see what he can do in that kind of role in that situation. And honestly, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Cardinals to win. I think this is maybe the start of a Kyler Murray MVP season. I think that they're going to go in, shock the world, and beat the 49ers in week 1. They actually played the 49ers really well last year, too.
Yeah, they did.
And I think that, building on this, I think that this improvement is enough to actually come in there and beat them.
See, if you guys watched the last video, you knew that I picked the Cardinals to actually win the NFC West. So obviously they have to start it, they have to start it in the right direction. And how else do you do it? By beating someone else in your division, right?
Right.
Especially the division champions last year. So for all the same reasons that he said, I think that the Cardinals are just so versatile on offense, with Kyler being able to run and pass. Kenyon Drake, he's not the best back, but he does what they need a running back to do.
Right.
They have really good receivers. The offensive line still is pretty shaky, right? And that's where San Fran might get them. But I do think that the Cardinals are definitely improved on defense. But I don't know. The Niners might be kind of pissed off that they lost the Super Bowl and wanting to prove, that wasn't just a one season, a fluke or anything like that. So I think that this is going to be a really good game. I think that it's going to come down to coaching, and I think that San Fran is just a little bit better up front in the trenches. So my division winner Cardinals are actually going to lose this game to the San Francisco 49ers.
Wow. All right. That's maybe one of two teams that we've possibly not agreed on. The next game is maybe going to be the most anticipated week 1 game.
Yeah.
And that is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, the Bucs have revamped this entire roster. Tom Brady, LaShawn McCoy, Leonard Fournette, Gronkowski.
Which is pretty crazy because they barely had enough money to keep Gerald McCoy last year, and now all of a sudden they have all these guys, So
yeah, that's just what happens when it's a Tom Brady effect. You get those guys coming in there on that that minimum.
Yeah.
And, they're just wanting to get that ring, right? But I think that the Saints have also gotten better, and they've gone through a lot of, adversity in the past couple of postseasons, really, right? They haven't been able to take care of business. And we know that New Orleans is one of the most, one of the toughest places to play in the NFL. And I think that they're going to go ahead and spoil the Bucs first game together, and they're going to win this game, take care of business, and, start off on the right foot in that division.
Yeah, I think that, if you look top to bottom, the Saints might just have the best roster in the league, right? Like,
yeah,
they have literally everything you need. They have a great offensive line. They have great weapons on offense. They have the quarterback. Defensively, they can rush the passer. They have really solid linebackers, and they have a pretty solid secondary, right?
Right.
Led by Marshawn Lattimore. So it's just like the Saints. It's like, I get that Tom Brady's on the Buccaneers, but the Saints aren't like, just an easy, like, oh,
they're not going to be someone, they're just going to roll over.
And it's in New Orleans, like you said. It's one of the toughest and loudest places to play in the NFL. So I think for the same reasons that, I think it could maybe be a pretty close game, but I think that ultimately the Saints, they've been doing it together, and they have all the pain from all these like NFC championship losses and just like maybe early exits, like last year against the Vikings. So I think, again, they're going to be like, hey, we're the leaders of this division.
Right.
And you're going to have to come through us if, you want to make it to the playoffs and, get that higher seed in the playoffs. So I think that the New Orleans Saints are going to win this game.
All right. So I was actually surprised. I thought you were going to actually take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this game, but I guess we ended up agreeing on that.
Yeah.
The next game is the Dallas Cowboys at the Los Angeles Rams in SoFi Stadium, that new stadium that the Los Angeles teams built together. It's going to be Sunday night football game. The Cowboys are literally star-studded, right?
Yeah.
They've probably got the best wide receiver core now. They've got three really good ones. They've got Zeke, solid offensive line. Dak's obviously, top half of the league quarterback. They stack that defensive line. They've got Leighton, Van Der Esch, and Jalen Smith. The only thing on that team that's a little suspect is that secondary. They're young, but I think that, with the help of that front seven, they'll be able to, kind of show out and make plays. Honestly, I don't even think it's going to be close. I think the Cowboys are going to steamroll the Rams. Aaron Donald obviously is a factor, and Jalen Ramsey, but I literally think that the Rams they're just not going to be able to get anything going on offense. And I think that their defense, they just don't have enough to really stop the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be like 35 to like 10 games, something like that.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, like the problem, like you said, the Cowboys have three really good receivers at this point.
Right.
Jalen Ramsey can only cover one at a time, right? And it's like, I think they have a pretty good corner opposite of him named Troy Hill. But it's like Amari, it's CD, Michael Gallup. Like they have some pretty good receivers, and stopping the run. Like the Rams are pretty good up front led by Aaron Donald and Michael Brockers, but their linebackers are kind of like sus.
Well, they lost Corey Littleton and they lost Dante Fowler. So those are big losses.
Yeah. So like you said, I think that if the Saints have the best roster in the league, Cowboys might have the second or third best roster right after them. So I think that I think the Cowboys are gonna go in there to the new SoFi Stadium and kind of upset the Rams and, just start the season as, we're the Cowboys and we're going to, go to the Super Bowl like they do every year.
Yeah. And then we're wrapping it up here with the last two games. They're Monday night games, doubleheader. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers going into the New York Giants stadium. And then the last game is going to be the Titans and the Denver Broncos. Now, taking a look at the first game, Big Ben's coming back. That defense was rolling, probably one of the best defenses, in recent history. They were first in sacks and they were up there in turnovers, force. I think that the Giants, honestly, they really don't have a good roster. I don't think it's really going to be a game. I think the Steelers are going to go in there. It might not even be a game by halftime. I think the Steelers are just going to take care of business, get off to 1-0, and just be moving on, looking forward to week 2.
Yeah, I think that the only thing that might kind of be stopping them is that there's like a pretty new cast of players around Roethlisberger that he didn't get a ton of time with last year with Deontay Johnson,
I can see that.
Eric Ebron. He didn't really like James Washington when he did play with him. And so, Juju's coming off of, I think, like surgery or just injury. And obviously Ben is coming off of injury himself. So, I think that that'll be something to watch. But I think the defense single-handedly can win the game against them. I think Saquon could still he's either going to have a pretty good game or it's going to be kind of lackluster. And then I don't really love, like, Evan Ingram, he's pretty good, but I don't really love their receiver core. And then defensively, I don't really like what they have going on there. So I think Pittsburgh wins this one, pretty convincingly as well.
And then our last game that we have, the Tennessee Titans at the Denver Broncos. Now, honestly, I think this game could be a lot better than most people think if Drew Lock and Ryan Tannehill both show up and play a great game. I think that they both have, kind of weapons around them, right? Like the Broncos have Phillip Lindsay, Melvin Gordon, Cortland Sutton.
Noah Fant.
Noah Fant. They've kind of got a rotation of tight ends out there.
And they drafted Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah. So I don't know about their offensive line. Probably not the most solid offensive line out there. But then they obviously have, Bradley Chubb and Von Miller who get after the quarterback.
They traded for Jurrell Casey actually from the Titans.
And then they picked up A.J. Bouye. And then they have
Justin Simmons.
Justin Simmons, right?
Yeah.
So they've got solid players all over the field, right? But so do the Tennessee Titans. They went to the AFC Conference Championship game. They need to let people know, like, hey, we're here to compete, right?
I think they did that with an addition this week.
Yeah, they just added Jadeveon Clowney on a 1-year deal. I think that'll help them out a ton. They've got, playmakers on offense, A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry. They've got one of the best offensive lines, in my opinion. Tannehill obviously needs to prove it, and then their defense, I think, is very underrated, especially with Will Compton, the boy.
Obviously.
You know what I mean? But no, in all seriousness, no, I think that Tennessee is a great team. I think they're going to end up winning this game out, just grinding it out, and beat the Denver Broncos in their place.
Yeah, I think that Tennessee's defense, like, again, they're one of those teams that they might not have all the name and star power, but they're a really good team. Like, their guys know their job and they know exactly what they have to do, right?
Right.
I think Denver, though, they do have a really good defense, but I don't know how they're more equipped to stopping the pass than they are to, like, really stopping the run, even though they have some pretty good interior defense alignment.
Okay.
So I think, and linebackers, AJ Johnson. I was kind of surprised that they released Todd Davis, but So anyway, I do think that the Titans are they're the better team, but like Drew Lock does have potential. So like, maybe as he goes later into the season, we start to see that and it starts to be like the Broncos, we might favor them a little bit more in like some of these tougher matchups. But for right now, I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans riding on Derrick Henry and Will Compton and Taylor Lewan and Jadeveon Clowney, right? I think I'm going to go with all those guys week 1 against the Denver Broncos.
So those are our week 1 predictions, picks of who we think are going to win this slate of games, in this upcoming 2020 NFL season. Let us know down below who you think is going to win, if we picked your team to win or if not, and who you think we got right and who you think we got wrong. I think we're pretty sensible about it. But, just let us know what you guys think down below. Thank you for checking out the Culture Changers podcast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. We will be seeing you guys in the next video. Have a good one, and good luck to your team in week 1.